Thanks for joining us here on Can I Media. We're in Banff at the Petroleum Safety Conference. One of the keynote speakers here is Dr. Peter Strahlendorf, and he joins us right now. You're from Ryerson University.
Yes, I am.
And what was the purpose of your talk here today?
Well, the talk was on psychology and safety, and the subtitle really is, Are we behind psychology? Are we 50 years out of date? That's generally my argument today, was that we have used psychology in health and safety, but a very narrow slice of it, and probably an old-fashioned approach to psychology, something that's behavioral psychology, which is 50, 60 years old. We haven't really taken advantage of more modern branches of psychology, cognitive psychology and evolutionary psychology and social psychology. It doesn't seem to have had the same impact in health and safety as behavioral psychology.
Well, so tell me then how these types of psychology would come into play when it comes to health and safety.
Well, to start out with, the way we've been doing it for so long with behavior-based safety is just looking at behavioral psychology, which isn't really psychology. You're essentially saying you don't care what's in the mind. You're only looking at overt behavior, input, output, positive, negative reinforcement, Pavlov's dogs, that sort of thing. That's pretty old-fashioned stuff. So in terms of more modern psychology, let's take brain physiology, for example. One of the things I talked about this morning was the effect of blood sugar levels on people's ability to pay attention, to be focused, to follow procedures. For years, people talked about willpower as if it's some sort of metaphysical thing. It turns out that a person's willpower or self-control is very directly related to the level of glucose blood sugar. So if you're stressed or you're multitasking or you're preoccupied, your brain is using a lot of blood sugar. It's dropping, and your brain is not functioning as well. So you're more likely to take a shortcut or be inattentive, and that, of course, leads to accidents. So that approach is not behavioral psychology, even though at the end of the day we're looking at behavior. The causes are physiological. So that would be an example of a branch of psychology that we haven't really looked at as much as we should.
I guess I just wonder, you talk about these different branches and blood sugar. A lot of companies aren't that concerned, I don't imagine, about the blood sugar levels in their employees. How do you get a company to, one, acknowledge that this might be important, and two, not think that this is well beyond the scope of an employee-employer relationship?
Well, some time ago I gave a similar talk, and the audience consisted of a lot of occupational health nurses. Surprise to me, they were already on this to some degree, because a lot of the companies they worked for had pre-diabetes screening program where the occupational health nurses would be doing blood testing to see if people were potentially diabetic and then proactively assisting them. So they already understood that people who are diabetic, who have low blood sugar, if it's out of control, have a kind of foggy brain. They aren't thinking that well, and anybody who's diabetic who's experienced that can probably describe that a lot better. But that's analogous. That's really the same thing as what we're talking about, although possibly more extreme. So they got all this, and they said, yeah, well, they could possibly extend those sorts of programs and perhaps do more blood testing, screening, and maybe after an accident ask people, among the many questions you ask after an accident, when's the last time you had a meal? When's the last time you had a snack or drink? And include that as a data point in your accident reports, and then over time we can get some better statistics, because the worry, the suggestion is that we may have accidents spiking just before breaks or before lunch or before the end of the day if all this is significant.
Do you see this then as something that could be easily adapted into the petroleum industry?
Well, nothing is ever easy, but where a lot of this stuff is new, you wouldn't expect us to immediately have a technique or program that you can launch, a package. what I'm suggesting is we have to go down that path and start thinking about that. Once you understand about blood sugar and self-control and attention, it causes you to look at many other things in a different way. So let me just give you one other example. In the oil and gas industry, people use heavy equipment, complex machinery. There's often control rooms with complex displays and controls. It turns out that when you've got a lot of input, you're multitasking, there's different screens you're looking at, different problems you're trying to solve simultaneously, that's essentially stressing the brain, it's using up blood sugar. So when you're overloaded like that, you're actually decreasing your ability to make decisions and to stick to things. So in the oil and gas industry, maybe very simply reconsider how we're designing things and try not to overload people with information. I mean, the irony is we're putting some of these devices, displays, controls, screens in work areas for operators of equipment for safety, but it may turn out that we're subverting our intent here, that we're actually overburdening people mentally, and they're less able to pay attention and follow through with procedures. They're more likely to make mistakes. We need to look into that, but it's not a simple program that you can unroll at this point.
Often, when it comes to safety equipment can make a big difference as well. But there seems to be a psychology around the use of that, because some people say, well, we've done it this way for so many years, why would we change? How do you convince people that this can be part of the overall safety process, I guess, or plan at a company?
Well, if you're talking about how you get people to use or wear safety equipment, use or wear devices, one technique is to involve people in the trial selection process. What doesn't seem to work is when somebody says, okay folks, everyone's using this type of eyeglass or this type of hearing protection. People have an opportunity to select from a number of options, because people are unique, they're individuals. If you actually sit down with people and ask them why they aren't wearing or using something, you'll get 10, 20, 30 different reasons from different individuals why they're not. And those are the things you have to address. But you can go a long way if you treat people as individuals in their PP and give them an opportunity to try things out and make a decision. They own it more if they've made a decision to adopt something. So that's one small aspect of personal protective devices and controls and so forth.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, well, thank you for interviewing me, and all the best.
We've been chatting with Dr. Peter Strahlendorf from Ryerson here on Can I Media.